MUFON STAR team. She's a MUFON benefactor, and she's also an open water scuba instructor. She's a first responder, underwater UFO, or what are known as USO, search and recovery instructor, a master scuba instructor, and she is one of the founding members of the MUFON dive team. Let me welcome to the stage Debbie Ziegelmeyer.
Wow. Hi. Thank you for staying. What I'm going to be talking about for the next hour is what has been happening in Missouri. Missouri is a show-me state, I guess you know. We've had more shown to us than we cared to have had done in the last few years. Last couple of years especially have been really incredible. So what I'm going to talk about is Missouri's UFO flap in the environment. Along with a large increase of the UFO sightings in 2011, they continued into 2012 with an unusual number of strange environmental events. What I started wondering at the end of 2011 was, could these events be related? Okay, so what is a UFO flap? I've had a lot of people ask me that. I looked it up online, and according to Bill Chalker, the coordinator of the Sydney-based UFO Investigating Center, he stated that it's occasionally UFO phenomenon occur in specific locations for an extended period of time. These are referred to as localized flaps. Either way, specific areas, for some reason, become the focus of UFO activity, either for limited, intense waves of sightings, or they maintain an enduring legacy of UFO activity. So, when did I discover that this was actually a UFO flap? Well, if you look at, there we are. If you look at the record of our sightings, look at this, 2008, we had 83 sightings, 2009, 128, 2010, 139, and then you jump over here to 2011, 253 sightings. 2012, 263, and so far this year, as of last night, we had 86. So I started wondering, well, where are all these sightings happening? We have a lot of activity that's in the Kansas City area, but it is spread, as you can see, it's spread around the state of Missouri. And here we are, we're located right directly in the middle of the United States. These are some of the towns, and I've only listed them one time, just to give you a general idea, one dot per where these sightings were occurring. So I started listing by month, trying to figure out, well, when did this actually start? January of 2011, we had 7, and then you notice we go down. Now, wouldn't you think that July you would have a lot of sightings because you've got sky lanterns and you've got fireworks and you've got people outside, but the activity really didn't start until August. And then we come on down here and look at October, 74. Look at November with 30. 13 of these were actually sightings that were in October. So, when did it start? January 2011. I know that most of you here heard about what was going on in the Midwest, and actually across the world. You can see here across the world. Birds and fish dying worldwide. 5,000 blackbirds in Arkansas, 100 pelicans near Jacksonville, North Carolina, 300 doves in Italy, 70 bats in Tucson, Arizona, thousands of fish in Australia, New Zealand, Vietnam, the Philippines, Brazil, United States. I just look at this worldwide, the animals that were dropping, birds dropping from the sky, fish being found dead. So on the news, you were hearing experts saying, well, this is normal. 30 birds dropped from the sky. They were talking about how they were probably on power lines, they got electrocuted, and 30, 40, 50, 100 birds, all of one species, just dropped. You know, I don't know if you've ever watched power lines, but there are other birds on that power line. It just seemed a little odd to me that even the fish that were found dead in the water on a lot of these lakes and streams were only one species, yet they were saying that the water was probably hit by lightning, or there was something poisoned, and surprisingly enough, it only killed one species. Walter Crawford, the executive director of the World Bird Sanctuary in Valley Park, Missouri, which is in the Fenton area near where I live, he stated, "I've lived in a rural area most of my life, and I've never seen birds or fish die in mass amounts." So we had January 8th, we had a dozen blackbirds dead under an overpass in DeSoto. That's not too far from where I live. January 9th, 30 dead starlings in Cole County near Frog Hollow. And January 10th, over 50 starlings found dead in Sullivan. Remember Sullivan, it's going to come up again. Historic winter storm, January 31st through February 2nd. Parts of Missouri, right in here. Parts of Missouri received 2 foot of snow. Now in Missouri, when they say, okay, we've got this prediction of snow, we've got a winter storm warning, we're going to get maybe 6 or 8 inches. We don't get 2 foot of snow. Of course, this closed schools, businesses, stranded people. Not very usual for the state of Missouri. So now we go on to some sightings. And as I said, we had 253 sightings in Missouri in 2011, so I can't go over all of them. But this one I thought was pretty interesting. There was a couple that was woken up at 2:30 in the morning. Their horses and their dogs were making unusual noise. I mean, a lot of noise, and that's pretty unusual for horses. So over the next 3.5 hours, they witnessed several unidentified craft hovering overhead in the surrounding area. And the first 2 craft were triangle-shaped. They had beams of orange light that were beaming down into the Merrimack River below. And they said that the craft were 400 to 500 feet above the river. And the witness tried to take a cell phone picture, but her cell phone went dead. So what she did was she got on the phone and she was calling family members. And a lot of people out in the country, they don't live, maybe a mile or so down the road. I know I have family live next door. So they got other family members came down and they were observing this all night. Witnesses also observed 3 formations of craft that they were 700 to 800 feet overhead, and they were going from triangle shape, and then they would go back up to, they'd go straight line, a roll of lights, and then back to triangle shape. And they said this went on throughout the night. And just before dawn, they said a large craft appeared kind of overhead, just off in the distance, but overhead. And it came straight down. It was making a humming sound, and it had small blinking lights that were coming out of it. There were these small lights, and they said they would travel around the craft, and then they would go back up, and then a little while later they would come back down, and they would go back up. This went on until dawn, which was somewhere around 6 o'clock in the morning. And the large craft eventually, when it disappeared, it just went straight back up into the sky and out of distance, and the other ones left, they said slowly, northeast and out of sight. So she was able to get a couple pictures. This is the closest craft, the one that came down, the big one that hovered, and she said it was 20 to 30 feet above the tree line, 100 yards away. And she took these pictures here with her Vivitar 4X camera before the camera went dead. The little picture right here, that was her rendition of it. She said these were orange lights here, and then she said these were kind of, like afterburner type lights on the back of it. So now we're into April and May of 2011. On April 22nd, 2011, St. Louis was hit by an EF4 tornado. And the tornado hit, and it's unusual, the tornado hit Lambert Field kind of head on. It damaged American airline planes, those big transport buses that transport people back and forth to the garage area. Those were turned over on their side. Concourse C was torqued, and it took that was the main concourse. So every time I flew out of there, we were in concourse D or, in a different concourse, and everybody's crowded in because the main concourse was unusable until April 2nd of 2012 with $50 million worth of damage to it. But fortunately, when the storm came, the personnel rushed everybody down to a lower level, and there weren't any serious injuries. And in this tornado across St. Louis, we were lucky enough not to have any death. Unfortunately for Joplin, which was exactly 1 month later, Joplin lost 161 people to their tornado, which was an EF5, and 1,100 injuries. There was $2.8 billion worth of insurance damage, to which to that point there had never been that large of a storm-related insurance claim for the area. This is not usual for any state, let alone for Missouri. We have F1, F2, and F3 is really a big tornado for Missouri, but to have them 2 months in a row, it's very unusual and something that had all of us a little unnerved. This picture I thought was interesting. Our Missouri MUFON Assistant State Director has remote viewing talents, and we were interviewing a witness at Fairmont Racetrack, and this is just across the river from St. Louis. The witness chose there. It was kind of a place his dad used to sneak him off to when he was a child. Mom would say, go on ahead and take the boy with you, and Dad take him to the racetrack. So we decided to go there and do the investigation. And then in the middle of it, Margie Kay started screaming at me, and she said, "Stop everything! Stop everything! You need to take a picture right above the lights," which was here. Now, if you've been to a racetrack, there's a lot of these type of lights around, and she says, "No, those, take a picture above those lights." So I was snapping pictures, and I came back and looked at it later, and whoop, there it is again. I thought it was interesting. You see this kind of swirls around, and I thought that's kind of interesting right there. Usually I don't trust pictures that people take into the clouds, but when a remote viewer says there's something in the clouds, I'm not exactly sure what that was, but I wanted to show it, just one more thing that was an anomaly. Okay, so now we're on to June of 2011. 3.9 earthquake struck Sullivan, Missouri. Remember, 50 birds died in Sullivan, Missouri in January. And June 17th, hundreds of fish were dead in River de Pera, and this is near St. Louis. So we've still got birds and fish dying. This is something that happened June 16th. Piedmont, the site of the 1970s UFO flap, they decided that they were going to have their first little kind of a reunion type little UFO conference. And so they asked Margie Kay and myself to be speakers. So Margie Kay came down from the Kansas City area. We live on opposite ends of the state. And she brought another STAR team investigator with her. And as they were traveling down there, the Piedmont is down south. It's very rural. They were just about 15 miles south of Fredericktown, and they ended up having a close encounter. You can see how rural it is right here. I Google Earth that. So Margie's description, she says, "I noticed a bright object in the sky to the east. The object appeared to be 3 very bright lights in a triangle pattern. It was approximately the size of a large pea held at arm's length. The object was much brighter than a planet, 5 times brighter than Venus, and was bluish-white in color, 50 degrees off the horizon and northeast of our position. I asked my passenger to open the sunroof and watch, and he said it moved to the north and was gone." And what was interesting about this was that you've got 2 STAR team investigators, and they're driving along, and the other one had plugged in his MP3 player, and it had a 6-hour charge on it. They had just started listening to a comedy sketch, and it went dead. So if you're a STAR team investigator or a field investigator, especially for MUFON, and your piece of equipment goes dead, what do? And they had a sunroof, so this investigator, he said, I was about to poke my head and shoulders through the open sunroof when I saw the first 2 objects I described as shooting stars. The second object was 3 bands of light moving from east to west. It was like these objects were painting lines from horizon to horizon. And as soon as they went over the western horizon, they disappeared. They were moving very fast. The third and fourth objects, which he referred to as a pair of shooting stars, he said, as soon as I saw the third object traveling, we were traveling south, I started to count 1 1,000, 2 1,000, and as soon as I reached 2, the fourth object appeared and was gone just as fast. All 4 objects, the first light, the 3 bands of light, and the pair of objects referring to as shooting stars, We're following the same flight path from northeast to west. So, I mean, these weren't satellites. These weren't planets, obviously. They're moving. This wasn't, they weren't shooting stars. These are star team investigators that were looking up through the sun roof, and by the time they got to Piedmont, they were pretty shaken. So just 5 hours west of Fredericktown, a couple days later, Belton, Missouri, had a very interesting sighting. 1:24 in the morning. The witness, her children, and her nieces were up watching the sky, and understandably, just before that, in May, we had the tornado in Joplin, April, the tornado in St. Louis, so all of us were a little shaken, and every time there'd be a burst of thunder and and flash of lightning, we were all up looking. So they were outside looking at the sky, and they noticed a comet-like bright, like a bright comet-like bright light come shooting down, and she said it came straight down from the sky, and it instantly turned into a disc shape, which was hovering over the houses down the street near a four-way stop. The craft had bright, spinning blue light, shot out 3 or 4 balls of bright white lights, and then faded out and went straight up. So, of course, all of them looked at each other, and they ran to the back window and thought, well, in the direction that it shot off. And they waited there for about 15 minutes, and then the craft came back, and it shot off 4 more balls of bright white lights, which went in different directions, and then faded out. And they said the 2 sightings weren't very long. They only lasted about 10 minutes. And we thought it was interesting that they don't live very far from a cemetery. The following sketches that I'm going to be showing next are from the witnesses, and the witnesses you can see are 33, 17, 14, 13, and 12 years old, all female. These are the drawings, and you can see one of them here. She's got first the UFO that came down, or the comet, and then changed into the UFO, and then she's got it hovering here. This one here, I guess she's got, the comet-like. There it is, hovering, the lightning. This is when it came over the townhouses for the second time. So these are all their drawings. This one was done by Margie Kay. She was the lead investigator on this, and she took pictures of the townhouse and the placement of where they said the craft was overhead. Notice the blue lights. July, sky lanterns. We don't have enough going on in our state with oddities, and we've got people setting off sky lanterns. By now, at least, especially last year, we didn't have to worry about them. We had such a bad drought that it was a $5,000 fine to launch a sky lantern. They weren't even selling them. But 2011, that was one more thing that an investigator had to be aware of. So our July sightings, we received 14 reports of red-orange lights in the sky. Some of them were sections of lights. Some were single. Also, a bright blue cross-shaped UFO in California, Missouri, and a gold UFO that was being chased by a helicopter in Kansas City. So out of these 16 sightings, you see we had 10 of them were unknown and 6 identified. Now we get into the strange, loud sounds heard in August. There's a little gated community with a lake in French Village on Goose Creek, and we had spent the day, my husband and I had spent the day down there with friends. This is about 35 or 40 miles south of us. And we decided to come back. Our friend stayed, and at 8 o'clock, about 5 minutes after 8, my friend called, and she says, have you seen the lightning? She said, there's this strange lightning, and she said, it's right overhead, right over the lake, and it's flashing, and it's orange, and it's red, and it's yellow, and it's flashing, 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 flashing. And she was a little unnerved. So I stayed on the phone with her, and then she said it finally, about 10 minutes, and then she said, well, it's dying down. And I went outside, and I could look, and way off in the distance, I could see there's just this flashing and flashing and flashing. And I looked on my phone on my little weather station, and you could see just right over Goose Creek, there was just this one little dot of something that was going on. So that quit, went on to bed. 3:10 in the morning, my husband and I were awakened by just an unbelievable sound. At first, it sounded like artillery fire. So it was going boom, 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 loud. It was 3:10 in the morning, so we were dead asleep. And when this sound came on, I mean, it just started. My husband jumped up and he started running circles. And he's 6'7", well over 300 pounds. And he's running circles. And so finally he calmed down, and we thought, we had just bought one of those Whirlpool tubs, the Whirlpool hot tubs, and just had it installed, and it was in the back, and we thought, well, the motor's gone out on it. So he went running down the stairs, and I went out on the deck. And it was coming from the sky at about, I guess, about 75 degrees in the sky. So this picture here, this I took the night that this happened. There was a crescent moon, and it wasn't visible. This is a picture that I took later. This is the moon. And just to show the area off of my deck, it seemed like the sound was coming from right around here. Lights, this 3:10 in the morning. I have family that lived next door, and they were out, and they were howling across from their deck saying, well, what is this? What is this? Lights were popping on. This wasn't a rumbling that came from the ground. Well, when you listen to an airplane, you can hear an airplane go overhead. When you hear the sound of an airplane or a jet, you don't look down, you look up. The sound was coming from up someplace. And lights were turning on all over the neighborhood, and people were looking up trying to figure out what it is. If this works, this is about 2 minutes long. The first it started out, artillery fire, boom, boom, boom. And then it switched to the sound that sounded like when the machine came up from War in the Worlds, the one with Tom Cruise. And at that point, my husband said, he looked at me and he goes, okay, this is your thing. What's going on? And I said, I don't know. And so I ran in the house, and I'd been working on a case, and I had one of those little tape recorders, and I got it. And just as I came out and flipped it on, the sound changed. So this is about 2 minutes long, and I'm going to let it play because I want you to hear how it stopped. Oh, it didn't come on. Let me go back. Oh, see, wait. Try again here. All else fails. Go back. Go back. That's me clearing my throat.
I don't see anything, do you?
My husband.
Sounds like it's so beautiful there. definitely broke that circle. Take a drive over and look and see if we can figure out what it is. Something north. Actually, that's north. Be northeast.
Did you hear that, though? It just stopped. Oh, if I can get out of this. That's okay. I'll go to the next slide. There we go. It just stopped. It was loud, and it just stopped. And my husband kept saying, well, maybe it's that MSD plant. That's Missouri sewer plant. It's a hydrostatic sewer plant. Well, so what I did was I called 911. I waited till the following morning because this is 3:10. By now it's almost 3:30 in the morning. And the next morning I talked to the dispatcher who said she had just come on duty, and she was told to tell anybody that called about this sound that it was the MSD hydrostatic sewer plant. And she said, but it seemed kind of odd. That's about 5 miles away. And she said all of the calls that came in were between a quarter and an eighth of a mile of where you're calling from. And so I drove down to where the power plant was, 6.2 miles from my house. Actually, I think it's 6.3 miles. And I started interviewing people that were right across the street from this plant, and nobody heard anything. There wasn't any construction going on in the middle of the night. I contacted MoDOT. There wasn't anything going on with the railroad tracks. The only call into the fire department was at 1 o'clock in the morning. There was a car fire. So I tried contacting the MSD plant, and I couldn't get them to reply. I was getting a secretary who said they'll call you back. At this point, I have no idea what it was. I looked online, and in August, nothing like this was going on. It wasn't being reported online. So now we're into we're farther into August. 39 reports of strange sightings seen in the month of August. This right here actually happened in July 30th. This was taken by my, at the time, 13-year-old granddaughter, Olivia. She went on a float trip with her friend and her friend's mom, and they decided, this was in Annapolis, Missouri, down south, and they decided that they were going to spend the night, and the girls got bored, so they went outside, and she saw these balls of light here. It's hard to see from here. She saw the balls of light that were just spinning, and she said they were large and they were just spinning. And so she took a picture with her BlackBerry, and she said they watched it for about a half an hour, and then the girls got tired from the float trip, and they went to bed, and they thought, well, we'll go out and look later, but they ended up falling asleep. So the next day, being my granddaughter, she went around, had the mom drive around and see what was behind, and she said, Grandma, there was trees and more fields. There was nothing by there that could have caused these balls of light. I included this other picture. Whoop, it's over there. I included the other picture only because I thought it was interesting. That was a sighting in Indianapolis, and it was a craft with lights across it. So now we're into August 20th and 21st, and if we haven't got enough going on, we've got the Golden Knight skydiving team in the area. We found out they were at the Kansas City Air Expo, and we had calls in that there was this white light, and it was dropping these balls of light that were spinning, and they were red, and they were hitting the ground, and we found out that it was the Golden Knights. They're a U.S. Army parachute team, first formed in 1959 with 13 members, became an official Army recognized team on June 1st of 1961. And so I copied the schedules, and sure enough, they were in the area. So I think I didn't include that sighting report, but we ended up about half of the sighting reports that we had in August ended up being these skydivers. So now we're into October. Well, I don't know. What do you think? Could it be a UFO flap? We had 74 reports of strange lights or craft reported to the Missouri MUFON, which is case management system, in October, with an additional 13 sighting reports in November, which were actually in October, for a total of 87. Now, when these reports were coming in, people were calling Margie Cave. This is mostly in the Kansas City area, and as you can see, 31 of these reports were on October 4th in the Kansas City area, between 7 o'clock and about 11 o'clock p.m., 7 o'clock p.m. and 11 o'clock p.m. She was getting phone calls on her cell phone at the same time, people calling in saying, did you see this, did you see this? And she said, file a report, file a report. I don't know if they did or not. We had so many reports, we didn't have time to follow up, but I'd say there was probably way more than 87 filed, or reports seen. So what we had was a lot of people ended up stopping because of a traffic accident at the 435 and Highway 70. That's how some of them looked up and saw what was going on. I decided to do a placement. The yellow pins are October 3rd, the blue are October 4th, and the red October 5th. That's not necessarily just one sighting. That's areas where these sightings were happening. Then I did kind of a breakdown of them, and the only way we could do this was we were just printing them out. I was printing them out on my printer, 31 of them for the one night, and I had my other granddaughter, Summer, who at the time was 11 years old, and she was reading them and helping me categorize them. She had spent the night, and so what I did was I assigned the ones that I thought could possibly be something that needed further, a lot of investigation, because Margie lived in the area. She got all the sightings that she would be able to contact witnesses and get video and pictures and sketches, and then I took everything that I thought might be explained. That's kind of how we started separating them up. It was all about organization. This was radar information, and I got this from Fletcher Gray, our STAR team manager. It's a composite reflectivity image from October 4th, 8:34 p.m. The single block image, which is this, just north of Kansas City, does not seem to move at all, remaining at approximately 8,500 feet, 9 miles from the sighting area for 6 minutes. So October 4th, this is just a little breakdown of some of what was being called in. Flat, oval, bright orange, 3 to 5 bright, small white lights down center line. UFO hovered over Raytown Water Tower, then flew away. Large craft seen hovering over Raytown. Gigantic low-flying craft on its side over Lee Summit. Large craft hovered, moved away, and was back over our vehicle. Large craft hovering over I-70 and Manchester Trafficway. UFO hovered over houses too low to be an airplane, but flashing blue, green, yellow, red, white lights. Large, bright object flying slowly and very low near Raytown. 40 to 60-foot orange fireball hovered over my car. Huge triangle gray object with blue and white lights hovered over highway. Ring of bluish lights 100 foot in diameter rapidly descended from the western sky at 90-degree angle, suddenly stopped, leveled, hovered 100 foot over store roof, turned, flew north just above trees. UFO was made up of 5 white lights in a circle with a red light in the middle, 3 orange glowing spears in my backyard, large object about 3 blocks away, above treetops and buildings, bright and silent, large glowing green disc flying near Highway 40, huge diamond-shaped craft with blue and white lights over Highway 435. Well, these are all coming in at once. Margie and I were beside ourselves. This was one of the pictures that was taken. I would think that this might have been the object. In my opinion, this might be movement, but I've had people that have said different. I'm not a photography expert, but I would think a lot of that had to do with movement. These were a couple of the drawings that were sent in by witnesses. This is another one. Okay, another one. This is just one. I believe this was the object, the white lights with the red center moving upward. So it's just one, it wasn't 2. This one I kind of questioned a little bit. Huge triangle-shaped object hovered over the highway in Lee Summit on October 4th. And I thought, well, okay, you've got the red and the green running lights on a plane. Looking forward from the plane, the red's, of course, on the right side, the green on the left. That seems a little opposite, but they could have switched the picture. But I spoke with Margie Kay, and she said there were lights around this, and the witness said as this large object was hovering, these lights were moving around. So then we had a couple other witnesses that turned in video, and then a few months later, they called us back, and they live in this area here. This is townhouses, and when they want to just get together and hang out, they walk across the courtyard here, and they end up in this little area here, and they sit and they have a beer, and they have some cigarettes, and they kind of just talk and look up at the sky. They went back a few months later, and they had a sighting of a large craft that was hovering. I mean, this thing hovered so low. It hovered over the townhouses and just scared these people half to death. Just about everybody in the townhouses was coming out. We went back and interviewed these people, and even little kids. There were little bitty children that came up, and they said, "Oh, we saw that. It was huge. It was over the top, just right over the top of us." But when he got by the time this gentleman went in and got his video camera, it was moving off into the distance. And he said the craft was gray with white, red, orange, yellow, blue, and green lights, which traveled northeast and then disappeared. So we walked out into the area. This is one of the witnesses. There's the quarry right here. And this is what we came upon. It looked like a crop circle, 22 by 22 feet. This picture here I got from the MUFON archives. This is Gulf Breeze, and they referred to it as a UFO nest. And I thought, look how similar. So, the investigation. What did they actually see? Here we go from here. We've got all this information, all of these descriptions, and as an investigator, we have to try and figure out what was seen, who saw what, and what is unidentified, and what can we identify. So this is the EAA flying team. This is stills from a video. These ended up on YouTube. They flew out of Lee Summit, Missouri, and let's go to the next slide here. This is their flying team, Chapter 91. And what they did was around, I believe, let's see, I got my cheat notes here. I want to make sure I know exactly when they took off. They took off, okay, I guess about 7:40. Okay, so they took off from Lee Summit. They circled around Lee Summit for 12 to 15 minutes. And we know part of this because one of the sightings that was called into us was from a witness that had seen this team fly off. And so he called in a CMS report and said, I think I know what everybody's looking at, because this was all over the news. All these sightings, we had newscasters, we had TV coverage of all this that was going on October 4th. So the team took off. They circled around 12 to 15 minutes. There were 6 of them in a delta formation, which is a triangle shape with an open end. They flew to Arrowhead Stadium, and they were going to do a fly around, which they did for about 5 minutes. They were practicing for an audition for a flight that they were going to do, entertainment for Halloween night. And then they came back, and they landed, I guess, about 10 minutes after 8, 2 at a time. They were flying at 1,200 feet and flying 150 miles an hour. So even though it was maybe a triangle shape, they were at 1,200 feet. They weren't low. They weren't 400 to 600 feet hovering above the highway or hovering over Raytown Tower. They were flying 150 miles an hour. So I thought, okay, we've got Whiteman Air Force Base, which, by the way, I got on good authority, was under a yellow alert. This is a B-2 stealth bomber. They're large. The light configurations didn't match up, and they're loud. As far as I know, they don't hover. We also found out that a squad of 12 drones was flown out from Texas and ended up in the Kansas City area. They brought these over the week before all this happened, which kind of makes me wonder, why are they bringing drones? This is the Big Beast. And the Big Beast, I guess they can hover, but they'll shake. And there is one light, and it's right underneath on the bottom. And on some of the drones are supposed to be stealth, but they use that just in case they need to do it for troop identification. You know, if the troops are looking up and they want to know if that's one of their drones. This came through. This is one of the CMS reports. We had calls in. They said, so we know drones are in the area. This went through Joplin, and I had people call and say, oh, they've got a UFO, and it's on a flatbed trailer, and it's going down Main Street, Joplin, past McDonald's. I thought, seriously, you really believe they would do that just openly? I called MoDOT, talked to the dispatcher, Missouri Department of Transportation, and spoke with someone named Linda who found out that these were drones that were being transferred from the Texas area east, and you have to have a permit to be able to come through the state, and it's the state's responsibility to escort them all the way through. So you had state troopers, county troopers, local troopers that escorted this all the way through the state. So another drone, this was June 9th, near me by the Merrimack River. And these are people complaining about the drones that are flying around around Whiteman Air Force Base. So we know there's a lot of drones there. Somebody's looking for something, or maybe because it's Whiteman Air Force Base, they're practicing there. A lot of drones in the area for some reason. So how did we try and determine what we had and what was unknown, what wasn't unknown? As far as I know, no aircraft in the world have blue running lights. Those are landing lights, and these were all craft that were described having blue lights. So unknown craft or lights determined to be 45, and they were undetermined to be unknown because these were objects seen hovering, flying off at an incredible rate of speed, were making unconventional maneuvers, had descriptions not common to identifiable aircraft, had blue lights, light patterns, or had colors of lights, non-FAA or military, as far as we know. We identified 31 of them. A lot of those were the EAA flying team. Of course, we had our 4 hoax reports, and the 7 insufficient evidence, we weren't sure if they were the EAA flying team or something else, so we just left them as insufficient evidence. We're into October now. Now we've got northern lights. They said there was I've got a quote from, let's see. Well, anyway, there's a quote here from a scientist who said, a baffling solar storm pulled colorful lights unusually far south, surprising weather experts treating sky watchers to a rare event. And actually, you can read it up there if I had my glasses. Whoops, it's up there. I had the quote exactly, which is from, oh, there he is, Seth Borenstein. This is from the Science Writer. So now we don't have enough going on. Now we've got northern lights in Missouri. These went all the way down to the northern Arkansas border, which is southern Missouri. October and November of 2011, I had 3 sightings called in on a Halloween. There were 3 reports filed that were 2 bright white lights seen in the southeast sky between 7 p.m. and 7:15, visible approximately 5 minutes and then faded out. So, of course, I looked on Heavens Above website and, whoops, wrong one. Sorry here. There we go, right here. This is unknown object B. So once again, I asked our STAR team manager, well, what could possibly be unknown object B? And he said, most likely that's a spy satellite. Okay, so now we've got Whiteman Air Force Base under a yellow alert. We've got drones flying in. We've got a spy satellite. I looked back on Heavens Above website. This was visible for 2 weeks, the last week of October into the first week of November across the state of Missouri. So now we're into November 2nd, 5:30 a.m., and the sound is back. The witness stated, if I had to compare it to anything, it would be almost like a large engine idling, but the sound was sort of pulsing. The closest thing I could think of would be almost like a lightsaber from Star Wars, the way they pulse and hum, but much deeper and louder. It seemed to start loud and just quit. And this is a very short clip, but you can hear just enough to hear that it's the same sound that I heard. If I can get it. It's not coming on. Oh, there we go.
God, I hope you can hear that.
I live about 40 miles south of St. Louis. This sighting was at the top of the state. It was the northwestern corner of Missouri. There isn't a MSD hydrostatic plant up there. And after that, I started looking online. These sounds were heard all over the world, a lot of them of what I heard, what my husband and I heard. And it's, you know, you can't explain it away with a local hydrostatic plant and say this is a sound that was heard when Some of them are similar, some of them are different. Some of them were just the Star Wars or the War of the Worlds sound, but something is going on, and we heard it in Missouri. So I took some software that I had, and I compared mine. This was my sound here with something from Conklin, Alberta, Canada. I thought they looked real similar. I found this online. So if we didn't have enough going on in the state of Missouri, we start January with an animal mutilation. A 7-year-old, 1,200-pound cow found mutilated 6:30 a.m. just west of the Kansas City airport. Rancher Casey Hamilton found his cow dead and missing its udders, bag, mammary glands, and vulva. Veterinarian Aaron Brisping stated that the cuts were precise and made with a scalpel. So now we're dealing with cattle mutilations. February 21st, magnitude 4.0 earthquake struck East Prairie. Now we've got another earthquake. This was at 3:55 a.m., 3.1 miles underground. And space physicist Peter Reary states that in the next 10 years, northern lights may be seen as far south as the Caribbean. This is a picture that on March 18th of 2012, Margie Kay took this, and this was fairly close to where she lives. She was driving and saw this object right here. She's got it there. Let's see, it'd be right in here someplace. I thought it was interesting to put up there. There's a lot going on. It's just not normal. Spring and summer 2012, worst drought in 25 years. Okay, 2011 we had a record snowstorm. 2012 we have a record drought. May 26, 2012, Blue Springs. It was a ball of light caught on camera by the news crew. Robert Culver first noticed the two lights a couple weeks prior. He was out looking with his binoculars, and the neighbor came out and confronted him, thought he was looking at women through his binoculars, and he goes, "No, look at the light up there." So then they ended up calling the news crew. They interviewed Becky Neely, and she said as far as she could see, it was vibrating red, green, and blue lights. Teresa Price saw it 2 different nights. The light was also seen by KCTV5's Dave Jordan. Dave Jordan, that was the anchor or the newscaster that was there. Dave Jordan contacted the Blue Springs police. They said they didn't have anything called in. He contacted NORAD and said they had heard about a similar sighting, but that they didn't know if it was in Missouri or not, that it was someplace in the Midwest. So this right here was bright in the sky. Margie Kay called me, and Dave Jordan was in the background saying, "What did she see? What did she see?" And I went outside, and I have what's called a Sky Scout. It's from Celestron. And it's basically a celestial GPS. So you can point it up and set it and point at something, and it'll tell you what it is and give you all the statistics. And so I used that to make sure what I was looking at, which was Vega. And she said, "I think it's Vega. It's in the same area." Margie also has similar software. And she looked over and she said, "It's this large pulsating." She was looking through binoculars, and she said, "This thing is a big ball of light, and it's pulsating, and there's all these different colors." And I said, "It just looks like Vega here." So I guess I live about a 4-hour drive east. To me, it was just Vega, because I don't know what they were looking at, but this was visible on and off for several nights for about 2 weeks, and all over the news there. Hartville. This is a case I'm currently working on. This was a light. It's kind of hard to see here. I think you can see it there, and it's up in here. This witness was out on her cell phone where she could get better cell service. She was talking to her daughter on the phone. This is ranchers, and she said she saw this light, and this is clips from a videotape, and it was bright, bright light. This was kind of late in the afternoon, and the light was going over, and then she lost it in the clouds, and I could hear her on the video. She said, "Well, I've lost it in the clouds," and then all of a sudden she starts screaming, and she's running, and I can see the ground, and she's running away from this, and showed me the video, and I said, "Well, what did you see?" And she said, "It came back low. It turned into a cone shape," and she said there were lights around the bottom, the open part of the cone, different colored lights, and the tip of it had a white light on it. And she said it was charcoal gray and kind of rotating. So her husband heard the commotion, and he came running up from the fields, and he said, "What's going on?" And she said, "Look." And so I asked him, I said, "How low was this?" And he said, "Low enough to shoot at." These poor people had, in 2010, had 2 cattle mutilations on their ranch. They've had a lot of other strange things going on, and this is an ongoing investigation. This is December 2012, West Plains. Emmett Reary's working on this, our investigator down there, and the witnesses have been seeing multicolored orbs in groups, barely hovering over fields and woods. Dr. Greer talked about that. They look like they're picking up smaller, glowing, flying objects. Other sightings are saucer with multicolors surrounding it. The craft had red, green, and yellow lights. Neighbor reported seeing a V-shaped black 2-story transparent craft, no sound. Witness awoke with the blue beam of light on her arm, which was coming in through the bedroom window. November 2012, a shaft of white light was seen coming straight down from the sky, hitting the ground between 2 trees. And on December 12, 2012, the witness saw 3 humanoid-type people, 5 to 5.5 foot tall, and they were about 30 yards away standing in front of her pond. So this is something else that's ongoing. Also in the state of Missouri that's ongoing is Marley Woods area, Ted Phillips investigation. So we've had the Joplin Spook Light. That's another thing that's been around for, documented for over 100 years. But there's still things that are going on. And most of this started in 2012. This is when we had the sighting reports. So these are just a few descriptions of other objects that were reported in 2012. I can go over them really quickly. Joplin, incredibly bright, flashing, multicolored lights split into 2 objects, then merged. 3 entities in my house, impossible abduction. 25 metallic, these are all January, 25 metallic spears flying over Kansas City. Independence, black triangle, hovered near cell towers. In Gladstone, huge oval disc hovered by radio tower. They like radio towers. Independence, huge UFO caught on camera. Blue Springs, multicolor pulsating lights high in the sky. Springfield, bright orb hovering, did swirling maneuvers, moved off at a high rate of speed. Henry, large craft with windows and humanoids, witnessed by 6 people. Lebanon, diamond-shaped UFO filmed. Joplin, 3 large illuminated cube-like structures escorted by jets with FAA lights. Kansas City, 5 cigar-shaped images going in circles above neighborhood. Benton, orange glowing X-like UFO spotted off Highway 71. Blue Springs, 4 bright lights moved across the sky, multiple reports on that one. Independence, disc, star-like object caught on IR security camera. Washburn, 5 to 6 flashing star-like lights in a straight line, blinking in a pattern covering the sky. Independence, huge T-fighter-like object, changing color, extremely low, near car on Highway 40. And Rich Hill, multiple moving lights over remote conservation area, and a Bigfoot sighting. And you're going to love this one. We had ghost hunters in December of 2012. Ghost hunters went duck hunting. And while they were duck hunting, they saw a Bigfoot. So they got all excited. They said, we're going to take our equipment, and we're going to go back, and we're going to put all these lights up and all these filters. And so while they're looking for Bigfoot, they're spanning across, and they had us come down because this was way over their head. They're spanning around, and they're going, what's those lights up there in the sky? No, I don't know. That's probably lens flare. And they keep going, and finally the one investigator called another one and said, do you see what this is? They had 2 different kinds of cameras with 2 different kinds of filters on them because they were trying to find this Bigfoot, and they ended up videotaping UFOs. So now we've got ghost hunters who went duck hunting, who saw a Bigfoot and taped UFOs. And so they called us and they said, we can't even deal with this. And so we went down and talked to them, and they're still out there now. And I'm not sure if they're looking at UFOs or they're looking for Bigfoot. So what it comes down to is I've lived in Missouri for over 40 years, and this is not normal. We've got January 8th through 10th, unexplained death of birds and fish. February 2nd, all these 2011, record snowstorm. April 22nd, EF4 tornado hit St. Louis. May 22nd, 1 month later, EF5 tornado hits Joplin. June 7th, 3.9 magnitude earthquake struck near Sullivan. June 17th, more unexplained death of fish near St. Louis. August 7th, those unexplained sounds at 3:10 in the morning. October, 87 reports of unidentified flying objects and probably more. October 26th, now we've got northern lights seen in Missouri. November 2nd, the sound's back. We go into 2012 and we start with a cattle mutilation. Then by February, another earthquake, 4.0. You know, they talk about the New Madrid Fault. This isn't like California. We don't feel earthquakes all the time. You know, California may feel several in 1 week. It's rare for people in Missouri to feel an earthquake, and maybe down in the Joplin they get rustled a little bit, but I don't hear about earthquakes. In the, of course, summer of 2012, the most severe drought in 25 years, and in December we had multiple Bigfoot sightings. And these strange sounds are still being heard worldwide, although I haven't had anything reported in my area. So one's got to wonder, you know, what in the world's going on? I guess the question is, was the 2011-2012 increase in environmental anomalies causing an increase in UFO activity, or are the anomalies being caused by something or someone unknown? That's the question that I started asking myself. This isn't normal, so what is going on? And by the way, that's my Jeep. You know, you'd think I'd get into trouble with that license plate, but actually I have people stop me and tell me about sightings. You can say I have my little alien family right here. This is a four-door Jeep Wrangler soft-top. So that's kind of it. I'm not sure. I'm not done at the countdown yet, so I think I finished here a little bit early. I was trying not to ramble on too much and keep you all. I know a lot of us are going to the Area 51 trip after this, so I guess, do we have any questions? My count on it. What am I doing for time? Oh, I got 12 minutes remaining. So, does anybody have any questions? Hello, anybody?
At the 2009 Santa Clara or San Jose MUFON convention, there was a gentleman, engineer, talking about the hole in the sky at Chicago O'Hare Airport.
Right.
And you had that one cloud that looked similar. And then the other thing is, I'm not doubting any of the UFO activity, but I was wondering, Wendy out there in the lobby or in the vendor area was talking about there's a station that monitors HARP. And I was wondering if there was any HARP activity going on in conjunction with all the UFO stuff. I'm just asking that.
You know, I've had several people that tried to give me explanations, and some of them said, well, this is happening near your house because of you. Not that important. The second one was HARP. You know, I don't know. Good question. I'm not sure why HARP would be targeting different places. I thought that was more trying to do weather control. I had a young man that came to one of our meetings, and he said he thought maybe the sounds were an echo from the next dimension that we're apparently moving into. But what I can tell you is that these aren't these underground rumbling sounds that people are hearing, and we're hearing a lot of them in Illinois, and they're starting up in the Kansas City area. This was something in the sky, and my first impression was I thought it was something cloaked up there because it seemed like it was coming from one centralized location. This wasn't kind of all around us like you probably heard here. It was something to where when you hear the sound, you go like this and you look up. So it's stationary in one end of the area of the sky and then just quit. I don't know if anybody's got any explanation. I'd be happy to hear.
Hi, I'm the chief investigator for the state of Arkansas. And one of my investigators, Mindy Hunter, sent me a radar return on the day of the BB bird kill. And it was a weather radar return. And on this weather radar return is a big red, perfectly circular area with sharp edges. As far as I know, that doesn't occur in nature.
Which day of you said of birds?
Yeah, the bird kill in BB, Arkansas, where the birds
Right, you had
mention
birds
that.
that dropped from the sky several different times, not just one.
Oh, there were thousands of birds.
Right,
Yeah,
right. And she saw something that had a spear the one time?
No, this was a radar return from
return.
from Little Rock Weather Station that had at BB at that time. BB, Arkansas was where the bird fall was, and there was a radar return of a return that was perfectly spherical with sharp edges. As far as I know, that doesn't happen in nature.
Well,
so just a little information for you if you want to look into it.
And two, that if they said, well, maybe they ate grain that was poisoned. When you had things, I'm sure it was the same way in Arkansas. We had 50 starlings. You know, where were the rest of these birds? If they got they got zapped by something, well, it was one whole flock of birds. You know, you would think there would be other animals involved, other birds involved, somebody would have had migraines. You know, I don't know. It seemed like it was one species of birds, one species of fish. It was really odd, and it was just explained away by the media. That's normal.
Yeah, all the birds were starlings in BB.
Were they? Yeah, we had mostly starlings too. Any more questions? Oh, we have a couple more minutes. I think we got about 9 minutes. But if people are interested, and you're probably right now thinking I really need to get to Area 51 or catch my flight, or I won't be offended. Any more questions? The Kansas City Conference. Oh, that's coming up September. I think it's September 12th. Remind me of Kansas City. One more thing I have to tell you about. Talking about cattle mutilations, when I got here Friday morning, or Thursday actually, but Thursday my brother Chuck Zukowski gave the speech on, the FI class on animal mutilations. And Friday morning, Margie came from the Kansas City area, gave him a call and said there was another cattle mutilation about 90 miles south of Kansas City on the same ranch that one she investigated 9 days before. So in the past 9-10 days, there's been 2 cows mutilated on the same ranch. If anybody's interested in finding any more about that, you can go to MissouriMUFON.org, and that will lead you to a site where you can read or find out more about it. But we've got ongoing. We were at the Ozark Mountain Conference in April, and there was a cow mutilation in Missouri while we were there in Arkansas. So it seems like 2013 is going to be the year now of cattle mutilations. But if you want to learn more about that, I'm sure Margie's going to have a report on that. Look it up, go to MissouriMUFON.org, and it'll tell you when our conference is. I think there were cards in all of your packets, too, about the conference. It gives the exact date and times and everything. Everybody's here. When you got your blue envelope, it had one of the cards in talking about that conference, and Margie will probably be talking about the animal mutilations going on in Missouri. Anything else? Well, thank you.
All right.